you've really had a remarkable life.
Well, I really have. It's been interesting from the very, very beginning. Yes, indeed.
It's when you think about your life, have you ever had anybody document it? Have you ever had a biography written?
Oh, yes.
Have you?
Yeah, there is a biography written. What's the name of that,
Or
Sybil?
the Secret Adventures of Being a Wife, and then Secrets of Staying in Love.
Yes, Secrets of Staying in Love and Adventure of Being a Wife.
And when were those written? Have they?
Well, those are written in the 1930s.
Oh.
Oh, and so they've been, and we've kept them in print.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Nelson did the publishing,
Mm.
but we got the copyright from them
Mm-hmm.
so that we can publish them now from the Peale Center.
Mm.
Yes.
Well, a lot's happened between that last book and now, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's true. Yes, it really has. But a lot happened really before the book was written, you know.
There's
Yeah.
a new one coming out in the fall, though.
Another
The
one.
new one coming out in the fall.
And
or
what's
next
the,
year,
what's that going to be
actually.
called?
Positive Thinking in the 28th Century.
Oh, yes.
For the 21st century.
The 21st century.
Positive
where we
Thinking
there
for the
already.
21st century.
Oh.
Yes, yes.
Well, when I thought about you and Norman, I thought, now here are two remarkable people, both accomplished in their own right. And I thought, how is it like to be the wife, for one thing, of such a public figure? And then, did you ever have any competition there?
Well, that's a very good question. When we were married in Syracuse, New York, my alma mater was Syracuse University, and my mother happened to be in high school with the person who was the president of Syracuse University. So that's why she wanted us to go to college there at Syracuse, and my two brothers did also. But and then my roommate, I was an Alpha Phi sorority member, and my roommate was the daughter of the local bishop, who sent this young preacher to University Methodist Church, and the Syracuse paper came out this Saturday, said. Most eligible bachelor to be installed in the University Methodist Church. And then they had a party for students down at the church. And my roommate was the daughter of the bishop, and she persuaded me to go, and I said, oh, I'm busy, I've got so much to do, I can't go and spend that much time, but she finally persuaded me. So we went to this party down at the University Methodist Church. And it was a student party, and we had a good time. At the end of the evening, she said, now come on, I'm going to take you across the room and introduce you to this new pastor. So she took me across and introduced me to Norman Vincent Peale. The story I tell is he held my hand a fraction of a second longer than was necessary. And I thought to myself, this is going to be interesting. Well, it took him 2 years to persuade me. No way did I want to be a pastor's wife. No way did I want to work in the church all the rest of my life. But we were finally decided that we would get married, and we decided it would be best to marry in the church where he was the pastor. That would be a good way to introduce me to the congregation. So we did, and I sent out the usual invitations that you do for a wedding. And on the Sunday before, we were going to be married on Thursday afternoon, and the Sunday before, I heard Norman saying from the pulpit, I'm going to be married this week on Thursday at 4 o'clock here in this church. If any of you in the congregation would like to come to the wedding, I'm now inviting you. I thought to myself, goodness sakes. Well, the church, of course, was packed with people. And as the ceremony was over, we had the chancellor of the university the bishop of the area, a Methodist bishop, and Norman's father, 3 preachers who performed the ceremony. And we left the church and walked down the steps of the church on the outside, got into a waiting limousine. And as we drove away, I thought to myself, well, Norman surely will say something romantic to me after this wedding. Instead, he turned and he said, you know, there was such a big crowd in there, it's too bad we couldn't take up a collection. I thought, well, I'm going to have to be...
You knew what you were in for then, huh?
I knew exactly what I was in for. Well, that's enough history, I think, for you to... now you can
It's
ask...
wonderful.
You can ask me any other questions that you want to.
Well, I'm always intrigued in terms of the kinds of personal development. You know, there are things about you and all of your work that should be highlighted. I mean, some of your accomplishments and some of the things that you really enjoy doing as you think back.
Well, that's true.
What stands out in your mind as those things that you're really
Well,
proud of?
probably the most important one was we used to get a lot of letters from people all over the United States because they'd read his books, Norman Vincent Peale's books. And we would get letters from people saying that they'd had a spiritual experience and had been overcome by an addiction, or had been overcome from overeating, or had been overcome from this or that, but how their lives had been changed. And I took a group of these letters, got them together, and Norman took them to DeWitt Wallace of the Reader's Digest. And he said, do you think that, would you read these letters, and do you think that they would make a magazine? Would people be interested in reading stories like this? He went back 2 weeks later, and DeWitt Wallace said, yes, I really think stories like this would make a good magazine. So that's when we started Guidepost Magazine. And it's now the largest magazine in the United States. We have almost 4 million subscribers. And the largest magazine in the United States that tells the stories of people and that have been changed by a spiritual experience. So it's been...
So that started way back in the 30s?
It started way back in the 30s,
Wow.
yes. Yeah. So we've had our 50th anniversary of Guidepost Magazine.
That's wonderful.
I'm going to have to change the battery here.
Oh, okay. So have I.
You know what it's all about.
You know, well, I think it's interesting because are you on and
you were
running
back
again?
on, yeah.
You know, just to chart the path that the women have taken, there's still a lot of challenges before us.
Yeah,
But-
there are.
But tell us again about your chairing that committee. We didn't have that on tape, and that was such a good comment.
Well, the various churches in New York City got together and formed a committee representing all of the Protestant churches in New York City. And they met in an office building on Lower Fifth Avenue. But they soon decided that it was important enough that the cooperation of all the churches, Protestant churches in New York, was true and was being used, so that we were going to build this building. And David Rockefeller gave us a 1 block long square opposite the Riverside Church on Riverside Drive. And we built there the Interchurch Center, which now houses many of the denominations of the reform of the churches.
And how did it happen that you got to be the one at the end of the shovel?
Well, I was chairman of the committee, so that they let me use the shovel to turn the first soil on that property.
And we were talking about that Reformed Church Committee, that you were the first woman to ever chair that.
Well, that's true. They weren't used to putting women in positions of that kind. It was always a pastor. But then they were having a few women who would go to seminary and become pastors. So they felt, well, it wasn't so bad after all to have some women around. So that they elected me that way.
Do you have anything that you would tell somebody about you that would really surprise them?
Well, that's a probably I could now tell them that I not only am a wife, have been a wife, and a mother, but I have been a grandmother, and I now am a great grandmother.
Ooh.
And I held my great granddaughter, who was named after me, Ruth, the other day, and she was a beautiful baby, the daughter of one of Elizabeth Peale's, Allen's girls. She had two daughters, and one of them named her first baby Ruth.
That's
Baby Ruth, that's a
wonderful.
candy.
What?
That's
Yeah.
a candy, Baby Ruth.
Yes, I know. That's right.
Well, for the women of the church nowadays, I was thinking, it's always wonderful to take the wisdom of someone who has traveled the journey that you've traveled and share it. And I was wondering, what kind of advice would you give to the young women nowadays?
Well, what I try to tell the young women nowadays is to find a group within your church of women who are congenial with one another, and form a little group of getting together to talk about either problems of the day, or problems in their lives, or problems of bringing up children, being a good parent, or problems of having a very happy, wonderful marriage. And so that we found that women were very much interested, and that this idea went across the country in our Reformed churches, women getting together to form groups, prayer groups.
And that must be important to you for certain reasons. Can you think about or identify, why it is that would be your advice?
Well, because the church should mean to a woman who is a wife and a mother more than just going to a service in a building. It should mean that it's a way of getting the right prospect in her life. And I found that people responded to that idea, that they ought to form that, not just go to church on Sunday morning, but find a group of like-minded women within the church and meet regularly, maybe once a month, for prayer, for talking with one another, for sharing the problems and the solution of the problems in the family life. Yeah.
In your own life, you've emphasized being a wife and a mother, but you've also been a leader. You've had a career of sorts going. There's this weaving of your life that is also part of it. So in terms of women, developing as leaders, you have any advice as far as that?
Well, I think that each person has to make their own choice about these things. But I found that it was very important that I get into groups with people. And I'm listed in Who's Who in America, and I'm listed in Who's Who in the World. In fact, I have a longer listing than my husband had. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of how I kept going. I kept going all the time. It was because I came, and not only did I get into the Reformed Church, but at the Interchurch Center, and we built that building up there on Riverside Drive, and then I was elected into the American Bible Society, and worked hard with that. I'm still an honorary member of the American Bible Society. I was also elected to the National Bible Association, and we've worked hard in that. So that I've had a lot of experience besides the regular church on Fifth Avenue.
Would your advice be the same or different to the older women of the church?
No, it would be the same. Yeah, it would be the same.
The women have always felt the importance of being connected
Yes, I think
with one
so.
another, and I don't think that has changed.
I don't believe it has either.
I think every grouping of women that I got together with in planning how the future might look,
Yes.
they all said, we want to stay connected. We want to have ways of being together.
That's true.
That was really an important focus for every woman I
That's
talked
true.
with. So,
But more, there's the realization that men and women can work together in the church. Maybe that's something that you'd like to try to develop.
well,
here.
one of the things that we've been emphasizing, for the future is to continue to learn how to work in partnership, both men and women,
Oh, yes.
so that women have the opportunity to develop their leadership gifts and serve the church without having people say, well, you can only fit in this role.
Well, that's true.
So that's one of the things that we really have
And
emphasized.
are you finding success in that?
It's slowly coming.
I see.
Yeah, people like in all areas, we all get entrenched in some ways. And it's difficult to see things differently.
Well, that's true.
But there's been more and more partnership, more and more men and women, appreciating one another's perspectives
true.
and gifts. And so I think we're making some progress.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess probably the final question, and then I want to ask you if you have some other things, would be, why did you say yes when I called and asked you to be a part of the fund drive?
Well, because I think that it's very important in our denomination to have an emphasis right now on the women's work, and that the way to do that is to raise some money. And I think that now there are more women that have money. They've been left by their husbands in wills that give them the opportunity of spending that money the way they wish to. And I think they need to have some advice and some help in knowing the best way to use it. Yeah.
If you were at Triennial and you had a chance on the stage to say something to the women in that room, what would you want to say?
I would say to them that they are the most important and dynamic force in all of the Reformed churches, and that they must take the leadership whenever they have the opportunity.
Would you like to ask us anything, or do you have some things that we missed
well,
that
I
we
don't
should have
think
talked
so.
about?
I think it's great that you're planning a triennial. And now where is that going to be held?
Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
South Dakota.
Yeah, at the end of July.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So.
Well, that'll be a that'll be a great meeting, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, that's why we wanted to come and see you, because we'll miss you.
Yes.
And this way, at least, we'll have you with us.
Oh, well, that's fine. That's fine. I appreciate it.
So,
Well,
have you been feeling good?
Oh,
Is your
yes,
health
I've been
good?
feeling fine.
You look wonderful.
I've come to the office every day, and Sybil puts all the letters that I have to answer on my desk, and boy, she keeps me busy.
She's not a slave driver, though,
No,
is she?
not a slave driver. Well, now your perennial is all planned, is it? And that's good. I know it's going to be great.
We're in the crunch time now. All those
Oh.
last minute details.
Oh, yes, I know. That's true.
You know what it's like to pull events together.
That's true. I certainly do. Well, it didn't seem possible for me to make that trip this time, and I'm sorry. But is Arvella Schuler going to be there?
She is,
Well,
yes.
that's good.
So that's why we wanted to get you up on the big screen so
Oh.
people can see you.
Well, that's good.
So,
I appreciate that
Yeah.
very much indeed.
Well, we're proud of you,
Well,
and we're grateful to you for your leadership and all the things you've done.
now do you? It's all right for me not to. I've been wondering lately whether I ought to cancel some of these engagements that I have and come to the triennial. But you've got a program already planned, haven't you? That will be satisfactory.
Well, we always are flexible.
Oh yes, I know.
So, that's something that if you decide to do, let me know,
Yeah.
and we certainly will have you talk personally to the
Yeah.
women.
Yes, all right. Well, at the moment, it seems not possible for me to do that.
Well, we love you.
Well, thank you, thank you. Well, I've been working hard for a long time.
You have.
Well, since at Marble Collegiate Church, and Marble Church is one of the important churches in our denomination.
Very.
Yeah. And Art Kelly Andrew, have you met him?
Yes.
Yes. He's doing a great job there.
Yeah, he is.
A great job
Yeah.
at Marble Collegiate Church.
So,
They're going to celebrate my 95th birthday.
when is that?
Well, my birthday is the 10th of September, but they're going to celebrate on the day before the 9th. So they're planning
Wow.
a service, and I will be at the church the 9th of September.
Wonderful.
And be with Art Kelly Andrew down there.
I'm going to make a note of that. I'd like to be there.
Oh, dear, indeed. Well, I have had the privilege of being out in Arvella's church in California, and I'm so glad that she's taken a role in our denomination, because she's a wonderful person.
Yeah. Well, we knew that there were, especially, when we asked people who in their minds stood out in terms of the women in our denomination, your name came up immediately. And Beth Marcus
Beth
and Arvella, and we said, we don't have to have just one. There are three remarkable women. And all three of you said yes.
Yes.
And that was so wonderful.
Well,
It
that's
was
good.
so wonderful.